Rita Tushingham, did you know at the time that A Taste of Honey was part of a whole new movement in British cinema?
Excuse me. Well, I guess because I mean, I started in that time.
Yeah.
So it was, I thought that this is what it had always been like. I mean, I knew about 50s movies where it was the girl next door, the woman who used to come through the door with a basket of flowers, hello, darling, you're back, and things. And suddenly people, yes, you were aware of it because Tony had made the Entertainer.
With Sir Lawrence.
And Joan Plowright. And they were talking about, oh, this new cinema, you can't hear properly, you can't this, it's too real and things. Yes, I was aware of that, but...
Because the stage was changing then.
Yes.
With things
the
like
whole
the epitaph of George Dillon.
Well, and also because we were all involved with the court and Woodfall, so it was a whole involvement. So I guess I was in that. But yes, people would say it. You'd get sort of critics. I mean, I remember, not talking about film, but we did a production of Midsummer Night's Dream with a lot of the young actors. We did it at the Royal Court, and the critics were appalled because suddenly people were coming on saying, my mistress with a monster is in love. And they thought, you can't speak Shakespeare like that. You know, so it's the same reaction to some of the, what they call the new cinema.
Yeah.
But then they quickly accepted it because such wonderful stories were being
The Angry Young
shot.
Man,
Yeah.
the Kitchen Sink School, all of that was around that time. Any comments on some of your compatriot films at the time? Room at the Top, for an example.
Oh, that was a wonderful film. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant film.
Yeah. Jack Clayton.
Yes, of
Did you
course.
ever get to meet him?
Oh, yes, quite a few times I met Jack Clayton. Yes, they were just stories. I think they took people, suddenly you could watch normal people, what you called normal people, people that looked like people. When you think of The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, Kind of Loving, and suddenly there was a whole spate, wasn't there? But it wasn't just in film, it was in music and everything. There was suddenly, I think things like that, it builds a momentum. And like, you know, they talk about the 60s or whatever, but there was a tremendous amount happening in the arts in that time, and it just sort of
Well, it was
built
an age,
on.
wasn't it? You think of abortion was made legal in the 60s, and homosexuality wasn't...
The pill was available, all those things,
Big housing developments in England, and I don't know, it certainly was a time. Sometimes I think the movies may have helped create it, but I think movies do a better job maybe of reflecting. Don't you think the values of a time? You study film.
Yeah, they
Archaeologists of the next 100 years would do
they
well
look
to
back.
study our movies.
And also it showed in England, of course, we have the class system, and it suddenly, they were making films about what they call real people, not just something that you went, like a chocolate box thing. It was based on true stories. In fact, things that were happening in the North Country or in London or wherever, you know, everyday life.
And then Britain went through that phase of everything becoming fantastic again, didn't it? The swinging London era. It's utterly fascinating. Rita Tushingham, you then appeared in very interesting films of the period. I'm thinking of one by a Canadian I've never met, long admired, Sidney Fury, The Leather Boys. What was Sidney, any comments or anecdotes or memories of that picture?
I remember he always used to look very worried, always, very, very worried, Sidney. And we shot that, we were in a holiday camp shooting that, and he decided that when we were shooting, the script wasn't exactly right. The dialogue wasn't right for the characters we were playing. It was a bit sort of too posh because we were Cockneys. So we did some improvisation, which I think can be dangerous, I have to say, for certain things. And then Sidney said, oh, great, I'll do it. And you think, I can't remember what we said. So we improvised a lot of that film, and then the continuity girl would take it down, and then we would...
But it worked, didn't it?
Yes, it did, because luckily it worked, but I think often you can go wrong with that, and he was very excited about that, but thought that we instantly could do it, you know, after we'd improvised.
But you could, though, you see. It isn't just luck. You can do it. You can do it.
You can, but I think you sometimes can lose it all has to be very finely plotted, and I think sometimes you can tend to go off in the wrong direction with improvisation. I really do. I think it can pull things apart. You have to know how it's built and what the colours are. And I find sometimes you tend to get overexcited and you lose a lot. But he was very good, and he was always worried. He was worried about the crisis in Cuba, that we were all going to die. I remember this day, and we should all go home to our families, because we won't be there tomorrow shooting. And he was really on it down. Yes.
With JFK and Khrushchev.
Yeah, and he was very worried about that. But apart from that, he was good to work with.
Yeah. The name Richard Lester certainly comes up again
Yeah.
here. You mentioned it before. The Knack.
Oh, well,
And-
Richard is a wonderful director. He's also probably one of my closest friends and very important. Again,
this
because
very
of Tony
day?
Richard. To this day, oh yes, we go on Christmas holidays together and all sorts of things, he and his wife, Deirdre. And the marvelous thing about Richard is when you're doing comedy, he'll shoot with about 3 or 4 cameras, but and he knows exactly how he wants it to be edited, and he won't let you overdo it. And you learn, because I love comedy, and it's play it for real, because, I mean, The Knack, when you think about all the things that were happening, taking a bed through London, knocking on someone's door and saying rape, and not today, thank you, and all those things. Well, if you play it for real, then it's funny. You have to believe the situation you're in, and he was very good with us on The Knack at making us feel at ease, and it worked very well, and he's got the most amazing brain. He's very quick.
Well, that's marvelous.
And it's great to work with because you know that he won't let you overdo it, because that can be, one can tend to do that, to overplay, because you've got no laughter. So you'll have a crew that will maybe laugh, but so you tend to play more. It's like theatre, but in film that doesn't work, and he would just keep it all very well
He made some
contained.
fine films, hasn't he? That
Oh,
and
yes.
the Three Musketeers he's made and so on.
Excellent, and the Beatles films, and
Yes.
How I Won the War.
They were classics. Still busy, is he?
Yes, he is. He's in January. He's going to start directing a play, the first play he's ever directed.
Oh,
so
that'll
it's
be
very
interesting
exciting.
for him.
Yeah.
How old a man
Okay.
are we talking about?
Oh, I don't know. You better ask him.
Better ask him. Now there's a diplomat. A picture that my sons and I always go and see, my wife too, but it was a little violent for her, was the trap that you shot in
Oh,
Canada
yes.
with the venerable Oliver Reed.
That's right. We shot that in Vancouver and in Pemberton, which was sort of
I
further
live
along.
out there and I know those places.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Oh,
That
yes.
was my first introduction to Canada, was arriving in September, and I couldn't believe the colours, the fall colours were absolutely beautiful. And sitting in the park there and seeing all the squirrels and everything, it was lovely.
The wolves. Tell me about shooting the wolves.
Well, that was difficult, but they weren't wolves.
Keep going. Disillusion. I love being
No,
disillusioned.
well,
No, do.
They were
us the lowdown.
Alsatians with weighted tails.
Alsatians
sorry.
with weighted tails. But we've been seeing this picture. My 2 sons.
The funny,
You destroy it.
no, don't tell them. Don't tell them. Not true. It's not true. But what happened was Oliver's sort of macho, and he said, "Look, darling, don't worry. Because they were sort of quite vicious, these Alsatians, and he said, if they touch you, don't have to worry. I'll look after you." And of course, when we started the shot, and I'd sort of been friendly with them and everything, the dogs and stuff.
Yeah.
And Oliver, I had to get his leg out of the trap and then bring him back to the cabin. And,
Yes.
and he put his arm around me, and the dogs thought he was attacking me and bit his bum. So,
Oliver Reed
and he
got his
went,
bum.
I thought, oh, thank you, Oliver. You really looked after me there.
Oh, that's
That-
wonderful.
and,
I mean, I
well,
don't wish
it
him ill
was-
will, but it's wonderful.
I thought, oh, yeah. But that's what it was. It was quite difficult to shoot, but I think Sydney
the
Ayres,
effects.
yes,
To
were
this
good.
day are hair-raising. They are absolutely hair-raising.
Because when we were shooting,
You're so close to them.
in Pemberton, the light went at about 3 in the afternoon, so you really had to get everything in as quickly as you could. But there was one scene there where there's a cougar that's watching me as
Yes,
I'm going through
yes.
the forest. And they said, the handler said, excuse me, he said, you should meet the cougar because then it'll sort of, it'll get to know you, maybe your smell.
Meet the cougar?
Well, so the cougar, this
oh.
poor thing, I mean, I don't believe in animals being used in films, but this
no.
is years ago. Now we know how they're treated. And so I met it, and I'd sort of said hello to it, and it was in the cage looking and stuff. And it was okay, beautiful, beautiful creature. So then we came to do the shot, and all the crew, of course, were up on their own little pedestal. They weren't standing on the ground. They put the cougar on the tree, and then I had to come out. But I was wearing, which I don't wear now because I'm anti-fur, this fur jacket. And it must have been its mother, because it went... like this.
no.
I was terrified. And sitting just off camera was this fellow with the rifle, ready. And I thought,
this was
and all the crew are up there. They're all right. I've never run so fast in my life. I had to run, but oh boy, I was terrified. And its tail was going like this. Because, of course, I'd met it just wearing a dress, not the whole costume.
Boy.
And you're frightening. You think, well, and I went to a convent school. I'm not a Catholic, but it was in the name of the Father, Hail Mary's, everything to try and get out of that. It's quite frightening.
See, to think
Really
that you actually wear, I mean, you know, I know they can do a lot of fakery in films. We all know that.
No,
but
but
you
it
wear
was there.
It was a personal encounter. It
Okay,
really
okay.
was. Oh, dear. Dr. Zhivago.
And
One of my
David Lean.
favorite films of all time, and I imagine yours.
It's a beautiful film.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And the cast, you know, there's Julie Christie.
What was Guinness? What's the lowdown on Alec Guinness?
He's wonderful. He's absolutely wonderful. I got on so well with him. He's fabulous to work with, and also he's got the most marvelous sense of humor. We used to laugh and laugh and laugh. And working with David Lean was an absolute joy.
You really admired him profoundly, and
Very much
yeah.
so. He was wonderful to work with. And you really have to concentrate, like you should with every director, but David would sit for hours thinking out a scene, and you'd be sort of sitting and thinking, and I like to think about what I'm doing, but not too much, because I think then it becomes pat and it becomes a performance, and you've got to have something to go for when you go for a take. So I'd be thinking, sitting there, and then you'd think about maybe grocery lists or something, because you didn't want to think too much about the character. So, but they would think that you were concentrating. I remember thinking, oh, maybe I better put, because this is great David Lean, who I admired tremendously. I have to put on a look like I'm concentrating, thinking about all sorts of things. And Alec Guinness and I would talk about this afterwards. We'd have fun, but they were wonderful to work with. He and
Guinness and David Lean relating well then?
Very well, yeah. I mean, it was I think he would say to himself, it was kind of love-hate relationship, but they certainly worked brilliantly well together. I mean, look at them, they're both brilliant men.
I know. But they had trouble, I think, in Bridge on the River Kwai, I'm told, where
Yes.
Sam Spiegel had to intercede constantly between the two of them.
But you
I
know,
guess,
if you heard of every sort of little drama that went on the
Right.
set, from morning till night, then you'd never stop. You know, a film would never be made if everyone sort of started making something of them.
Yeah.
It's just, I think, you know, an actor maybe has an idea of how a scene should be, and someone else has another, or maybe they feel they've been waiting too long. It's very difficult sometimes if you're on the set at, you know, ready and made up at 8 in the morning, and suddenly you don't shoot till 6 at night.
Right.
That
That's
can
right.
be tiring, you know. There's so many things that come into play.
Julie Christie.
Oh yeah, I love Julie Christie.
You still see her?
I haven't seen her for quite a while, but I think she's a wonderful presence on the screen. I always have. She's
Very friendly person, and
she's just to me is a brilliant screen actress.
Yeah.
She just brings so much when you see her on the screen.
Omar Sharif.
Oh, he's lovely, Omar. I saw him actually. I saw Omar just last year when they had the memorial in St. Paul's Cathedral for David Lean. That was an extraordinary thing, because there was Peter O'Toole and Omar Sharif and Robert Bolt and Sarah Miles and Tom Courtney.
Oh.
And they played all the themes from his films under the dome in St. Paul's Cathedral.
All the themes?
And it was so beautifully done. And Lady Lean had arranged everything. And they just had a table with all his awards on. They just walked up and put them. And then they sat there and played themes and spoke about him. And it was an amazing service. It really was. And then we all went back to his home and sort of just chatted and everything. But to hear all this music in St. Paul's Cathedral, I think it's the first time it's ever
Got
been
me
done.
shivering.
It was extraordinary, and then people talking about him and the actors that were there and all meeting up after all that time.
Dear, dear, dear. My word. It's
Yeah.
marvelous. I understand you make your home in Toronto, and we were chatting before the interview. I was pretty close. I thought around 10 years or so.
Yes, it is 10 years. I have a home here, but since my youngest daughter now has gone to university.
You got two of them, haven't you?
Yes, I've got two. One who's in Los Angeles, who works as a commercials producer, and my youngest daughter, she's at Donna is the eldest, Aisha's the youngest. She goes to Western University. She's at Huron College. And she's studying English, and she wants to be an actress, and she's really very good. She really is.
Ask you if there's a successor coming along.
Well, she loves it, and she's very good, but I mean, you know, it's up to her to...
What's her name?
Aisha.
Alicia.
No, Aisha.
Alicia.
No, Aisha. A-I-S-H-A.
Aisha. Wait a minute, Aisha. That sounds almost like H. Rider Haggard's
Yes,
She.
but
That was Aisha, wasn't it?
It's, yes. Well, I think, no, she was called Aisha as well.
Yes, that's right.
But this is, it's from Islam, and it means life.
Oh. Your enunciation was pretty, just my ears. I'm getting a little deep, as they say in my...
What?